Okay, so we just did inside, cut on all our lights, got our flaps down. So we want to check the nav light. So we should have a green light here.
We sure should. Green light looks good. Right up front, LED landing light.
Landing light.
Okay.
Red light on this side.
So right here, we'll check our stall indicator. So if you peek your head in, you should be able to see a red bulb flashing on and off.
I see the red bulb.
Okay. That is our stall indicator.
Okay.
So we'll always check that.
And that's this.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. How's our red nav light?
We got our red nav light right here. We should have a white light, and we have our beacon light going off.
So,
Shouldn't, I thought the beacon was white.
nope. So beacon right here, red, rotating red light, and then white anti-collision light on the very back.
Right, that's the collision light.
Yes.
I thought the one on the top was also.
So this is the rotating beacon.
Okay.
So the rotating beacon lets everybody know when we're about to start our engine. So we'll flip that on right before we start up the engine. Sort of lets everybody know not to walk near our prop or behind there. All right, so you have to basically hop back in and turn off all the switches you turned on.
Yep. Save that battery. All right. So we're gonna cut off our lights, these three, and our master.
All right.
Are all
so
off.
you would put that black switch in the middle position.
Black
So,
switch.
Yep. So the black one actually has 3 positions.
Okay.
So if you flip it all the way down, it puts the nav lights on dim mode.
Okay.
Put them up, it puts them in bright, and the middle is off.
Middle is okay. I see middle on off switch now. Okay.
So open that little guy up. Should be a sump in there.
So we got the sump here.
Yep. All right. So your sumps are right here on each of the fuel tanks under the wings.
This is when we get nice and fuely on us.
So they have a sump at the lowest part of the tank. It's catching debris.
We are looking pretty blue.
All right. So 3 things. 1, we want to make sure it's dyed blue, like you said. 2, we want to check for any major debris or sediment floating around in there. And then last, we want to make sure there's not any water in there.
Yeah, last time we had water.
Yeah, so the water would separate itself from the fuel to the top. We'd be able to see that. So, all right. Does that look good?
So while we're here, I mean, we're already down here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to check the struts, or we're just going to go in order?
So I like to go in order.
Okay.
I know it makes sense sort of while you're already down there, but it's just sort of a lot to keep up with.
Gotcha.
All right. So now we'll pour it back in this side. And when we pour it, we'll make sure that we try and pour it through the screen there. There we go. That way if there is any sediment, we'll hopefully catch it.
Catch it on the screen. Yeah.
All right, now when we dip the tanks, we'll just push that all the way down until we hear it. Put your finger over it, we'll vacuum there. Looks like we got about 12 over here. Okay, what you do now.
Yep, 12.
Now everybody has a slightly different way that they like to do their pre-flight. One walk around, check the lights. The next one we'll check all the fluids, so fuel, oil, and brake fluid, and then we'll do a final walk around, check everything else.
Okay.
All right, so this side we have 2 sumps. So one is right here, and then one is sort of hiding right over there.
For the engine, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get both of those, and you can combine the 2 samples on this side.
Okay.
No problem there.
That looks pretty blue to me. Okay. I don't see any clear separation.
Yep, it's good to me.
All right. This next one is right here.
Yep. This one drains a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Not quite as much fuel pressure.
This is from the runoff from the engine?
So this is just before the fuel goes into the engine. This is sort of the last chance to strain any of that stuff out. So
we're still good.
Piper were smart enough to put another sump there.
This one we have less fuel, or less.
Yeah.
It's like 6.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
So that's our biggest tank. Right tank has the most fuel.
Okay. All right. Do you know approximately how much we burn per hour?
7.
Yeah, so it's about 7.5 to 8.5 gallons in here. So we say 8 on average. So per regulations, our 30-minute reserve is about 4 gallons. So technically, we have enough fuel to do this flight, but we'll probably top off on fuel. It's not going to hurt us. Plenty of time.
Because we would definitely be flying on the right wing.
Yes. Yep. And that's one of the things that we'll check on the checklist. Actually get back in, verify that fuel is on the proper tank we want it to be.
We can just throw this back in the...
Yep, so you can throw that back in the ammo can so we don't carry it around. So brake fluid is going to be right over here. So in this little reservoir mounted cricket up here, it's going to be our brake fluid. So sometimes you got to rock the aircraft just a little bit to be able to see it.
Yeah, I see it in there. It's very difficult.
Yeah,
but
it is. I just want to make sure that that's nice and topped off.
Yep.
While we have the engine cowling open, we like to make sure that nothing looks broken, disconnected, missing, leaking, anything like that. It is possible that birds can get up in here and start building a nest, so we like to check for that. No birds, no bees, anything like that. So everything looks good to me. Nothing's broken. Looks out of order.
Yeah.
Spark plugs are all in place.
We're going to check the oil.
Yep, we'll check the oil on the other side. And open that cowling up. What can you tell me about the engine?
So the 320 IO?
So not IO, just O. So the I actually means fuel injected.
Okay.
We're not fuel injected. We got a carburetor. So just O320.
O320.
Yep.
And this one needs, it could take up to 8, but you probably won't do 8.
Probably won't do 8.
Normally like 6.
Yeah, 5 and 6 right there.
Okay.
So make sure when you're checking the oil all the way, we don't sling oil everywhere.
So
just rotate it so you can see the numbers.
Yeah, I see the numbers. I mean, I got all the way up to 8, but I don't think that's really what it's reading.
Okay. So sometimes just take a rag, wipe it clean. Just pull it all the way out. There you go.
That's looking pretty low. We're about 4. We're a little bit above 4, 4 and a quarter.
All right, I can't quite see it from here. Yep, sure enough. All right, so you can go grab a quart of oil.
So, okay.
All right. Same thing on this side. Nothing broken, disconnected, bent, missing.
No.
All right. So right here we have one of our magnetos. So we have 2 of those. Dual magneto system. So 4 wires running out of that makes sense. We got 8 spark plugs total. So 4 on this side, 4 on the other side. So when we're doing our mag check, we'll only be running on 1 mag.
We should see a drop off.
Yep, you should see that drop. All right.
Okay.
All right, so next we're going to do our final walk around. Now, since we only have the one door, it sort of makes sense to start right here. So that way, when we go all the way around the aircraft, we'll finish right here. We can just hop straight back in.
Okay.
So we'll start right here with the flaps. So we'll just give those a little pull, make sure they feel nice and tight. This little spar over here, make sure that that's not disconnected or bent or anything. It's a lot harder to check, especially that when the flaps are up. So that's why the checklist has us put them down for the pre-flight. So let's check them in the down position. All right, moving on to our ailerons out here. They should deflect freely upwards and downwards.
So the movement for the ailerons.
These hinges should have a pin running through it. We always have to check for that.
There's a pin running right through there.
All right, we should be able to see the controls moving in the cockpit as we do that. If we don't, it means we probably snapped a cable, so that's no good. Obviously want to address that. Out here, want to make sure we're not missing any screws on the top or the bottom. These screws are called quarter turn screws. They only take a quarter of a turn before they come out. So it is possible to lose some of these. So we like to keep them.
Okay.
All right. While we're out here, we want to make sure that this bulb is not cracked. We already know it works, but we want to make sure there's no cracks in it, as well as this guy, no cracks in that. So this allows us to verify that our lights are working. At night, we can see this from the cockpit. It sort of reflects the light in this thing.
Got you. Okay, I was wondering.
That's what those little guys are for.
I was wondering what that was for. Okay.
All right. So now we can move on to the tie down. So these can be a little stubborn sometimes. So sometimes you got to pull on the loose side here and then push up on this little tab, and then it should loosen just like that.
Okay.
All right. All right, next thing, this little guy right here is actually a jacking point. Maintenance can jack up the aircraft from those points. There's one on each side. So if they needed to change a tire or something, they could actually use that right there to jack it up. It's reinforced on the other side of that one.
Okay.
All right, next, this little guy right here is our fuel vent. So what that does is that allows fuel vapor to escape from the tank. So if we put fuel in on a cool night or something, and the aircraft sits all day, as it heats up, as the metal starts to heat up, the fuel starts to heat up, it's going to want to expand, right?
Right.
So that gives somewhere for the vapor to escape from. Otherwise, it would risk deforming the tank. That can actually happen if that gets clogged. So we always want to make sure that that's not clogged by bugs, mud, or even ice possibly. So always want to make sure that's clear. The other thing it does is it lets air come into the tanks. So as we're pulling fuel out of the tanks into our engine, if we didn't allow air to enter the system, we would start to pull a vacuum and eventually starve our engine of fuel. So that's the other purpose of our fuel vents. All right, while we're down here, we'll check our tires. So I just like to give them a good press, make sure they don't feel flat, or I shouldn't be able to push it too much. We like to make sure there's no bald spots on the metal, or no bald spots on the tire, no metal showing through the tire, or anything like that. Also, make sure that the strut is not collapsed. We should see about 3 or 4 fingers worth of extension, or 3 or 4 inches or so. So just make sure that that's not completely collapsed. Brake line is not disconnected. It connects right down here, so you want to make sure that's connected. And we're not leaking any brake fluid down there. So we'll check that on both tires.
And that would be hydraulic fuel on the brake lines?
So that would be brake fluid.
Brake fluid. Is it red?
So brake fluid is actually black.
It's black?
Yes.
Okay.
I think in cars it's red. Whatever the DOT3 fluid or whatever it is. But ours is actually black.
Okay.
All right. So this tire, obviously no brakes on the nose wheel tire, so we don't have a brake system to check, but we'll still make sure we have good pressure.
Now, is this nose wheel tied to the rudder?
Yes.
Or is it free? Okay.
Yes, it is tied to the rudder. Yep. So as we press on the rudder pedals, the rudder's going to deflect. We're also going to be deflecting the nose wheel.
Okay.
So this aircraft does not have the pedal brakes on top of the pedals.
Hand brakes.
Yeah, we only have the hand brakes. So if it wasn't connected, we wouldn't really be able to steer on the ground unless we were going really, really fast.
Yeah.
So, all right. So tire looks good. No bald spots. No metal. This strut is not collapsed. This one is pretty much always going to be extended more than the main wheels. So that's to be expected. Moving upwards, we have the air intake for the engine itself. We want to make sure that that's not blocked. No birds or sticks up in there.
And it's just a filter?
Yes. A little bit of a filter there to sort of catch anything that might be headed that way. You can also check the bulb while you're moving your way up. Make sure that that's not cracked. Okay. All right. So as we move up even more, we'll check the spinner here. Make sure we're not missing any of our screws in the spinner. That should be nice and good. We'll check the prop. So we just want to run your fingers over the edge of the prop. Make sure we don't feel any nicks or chips or anything. Sometimes as we're taxiing around, it's possible that we could sort of pick up a rock and it creates a little bit of a chip.
Yeah.
And if we don't address that, it can potentially get worse, eventually leading to a piece of the propeller separating. So we like to address those sooner rather than later. Another thing we can check is the alternator belt. It's right here, so we want to make sure that that is, first of all, there, and second of all, it has pretty good tension on it. So we'll check that. All right. Last thing, the air intake for our oil cooler. We want to make sure that's not obstructed in any way. So that's what all that is. Right here we have our starter, in case you ever need to know that. All right. Same thing on this side. We'll do the same tire and brake checks. So it looks good, feels good. Brake line's not disconnected, not looking at any kind of fluid. Strut looks good. All right, moving outwards, we have our fuel vent first. And that same jacking point on this side. I'll let you get the tie down.
Yes.
Yep, gotcha. There you go. All right.
Now this here, that's your pitot, right?
Yep. So this is our pitot mast. So on the Cessnas, they have an actual pitot tube.
Yeah.
And then over here they have a static source, right?
Right.
So we have a pitot mast, which actually combines the two.
Okay.
So we have our ram air intake and our static air source all in that one sort of device there. So if you want to go ahead and remove that cover, take the cover off the pitot mast.
I see the holes right there.
So we'll verify that those holes are not obstructed in any kind of way. So those look good. I'll just double check, make sure our stall indicator is not obstructed. All right. We'll move outwards and check this part of the wing. Same as the other side. No missing screws. Nothing cracked out here.
Okay.
While we're looking over the wings, especially, we'll just give them a good glance. Make sure that there's no dents in them or major deformations. So deformations. And just nothing looks out of place.
Yeah.
Same thing with just the aircraft in general. We'll just be looking over the airframe as we go, make sure that nothing looks out of sorts.
We have movement on the inside, on the aileron. We have our little pins inside here.
Yep.
On both sides. And our flaps are down. Our hinge is good right here. Okay.
All right. So before we head to the tail, one of the other things we can check is our antennas. So we have primary and secondary radio communication antennas right here. This little sort of flat node right there, that's actually our GPS node right there. That's where we get over GPS positioning info. The little sort of bar that's sticking up, that is our temperature probe.
Okay.
And you'll see it connects to a temperature thermometer inside the cockpit. Try and remember to point that out to you. But that's what that little guy is. All right, now moving back to the tail.
So you have a stabulator.
Yep, so we have a stabulator, so
the whole thing moves.
The whole thing moves, unlike the Cessna. A little bit different. So you'll notice as the stabulator moves, the trim tab actually
moves
even
more. Yep.
In the same direction. So alleviate control up there. So the trim tab is connected. We got 5 hinges all the way across, so we'll make sure each of those has a pin in it.
There's a pin in that one. This is one long pin.
Yep.
Pin here. Pin here.
All right. Unlike the Cessnas, our rudders should be nice and stiff. Not too much deflection there. These antennae right here are the VOR antennas. You can remember that because they sort of make a V shape. So VOR and VU. Make sure that the bulbs are not cracked. So I don't see any cracks. Nothing's loose. I know on our other Cherokee, this light is a little loose. We've been keeping an eye on that. Make sure it doesn't get any worse. Want to make sure that there is a bolt running through there with a nut on the end of it. I always like to check, make sure that it's not become disconnected or anything. And then while we're here, we can go ahead and get the tail tie down as well. All right. Looks good. All right. Some aircraft are going to have their inspection sticker right there. The FAA recently changed the regulations on inspections. So they used to only be good for 3 years. They're now good for 7 years. So everybody's still sort of in the process of changing their paperwork and their stickers. So, all right. So we're pretty much right back when we started. Now we're going to go get a quart of oil.